We're continuing our series on learning to love. And we talked about the fact in our last study in 1 Corinthians 13, we began to develop the statement made in Paul when he said this. He said, love is kind. To illustrate kindness, let's look at the story. We looked at a story in the Bible. Remember we talked about a story of some people who came across some people or person and was able to show an act of kindness and the responses that they had. You know the story. We all know it. It's the story of the Good Samaritan. It's a story where a man is traveling on a dangerous road. He's attacked. He's robbed. He's left for dead. There are three men who are in the story who illustrate our attitudes towards people around us. First of all, the priest comes around. It says in Luke chapter 10, 30 and 31, there was a man who was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when robbers attacked him, stripped him and beat him, leaving him half dead. It so happened that a priest was going down that road. When he saw the man, he walked by on the other side. So you have the priest comes along, senses, he senses what has happened, and he says, I'm not getting involved, and he goes right on the other side of the road. Then there's another guy there. We have the Levite comes along, and here's what it says about him. In the same way, a Levite also came there, went over, looked at the man, and then walked on by the other side. Went over, looked at the man, but what he saw had no effect on him. And so he walks over, he takes a look, and then he goes back on the other side of the road and he continues his journey. Kind of like rubberneckers down the highway. Then you got a third guy. There's the Samaritan. But a Samaritan who was traveling that way came upon the man, and when he saw him, his heart was filled with pity. Again, you had the Samaritan, a race of people hated by the Jews. And it was, a guy that, of all people, that you wouldn't have thought that they would have had anything to do with. And yet, here he is. And he sees this man. He sees him. He ends up being the star of the story. We will look at him to learn the lifestyle of kindness. Now, here are the three attitudes that you can have towards people when you have the opportunity to do something good. Number one, you can do these three attitudes. Number one, you can keep your distance. That's what the first guy did. He didn't even get anywhere near. When he perceived that there was something going on, he said, none of my business. I'm going on the other side of the road. Then you had the curious but uninvolved. That's the guy who saw and said, you know what, I'm going to get a look at this. Nope, not going to do it, and went on. And then you had the other guy that said, I'm going to treat others the way I want to be treated. Here are those three attitudes. The Good Samaritan did four things that I think we need to understand that we have to start doing in order to be what Jesus describes here in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 as being kind. Let's look at some of those things. The first one we saw in this last study, we have to start seeing the needs of people around us. Seeing the needs of people around us. When he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. The first step of kindness is to ask God to sort of give us a spiritual radar so that we can kind of open our eyes and see what's going on around us and visualize and see the needs of people around us. Because so many times we can get so busy doing our own thing that we just don't see things. So we need to start seeing the needs of people around us. That's the first thing about being kind. And it's real easy to get involved in your own life and doing your own thing and being out there, and you're kind of so busy. I've got this thing to do. I've got my list of things I got to do. But you need to do step number one first, and that is start seeing the needs of people around you. The second thing the man did was we need to start sympathizing with people's pain. Sympathizing with people's pain. It's not enough just to see their need. You're going to have to feel their emotions. You're going to have to sympathize with their pain. You're going to have to do those things. It says in Luke chapter 10 and verse 33, it says, and when he saw him, he had compassion. When he saw him, he had compassion. Circle compassion. First his eyes kicked in, and then his heart kicked in. Matthew chapter 9:36 says this. It says, but when he saw the multitudes, talking about Jesus, when Jesus saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. Romans chapter 12, verse 15 says this: we need to rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Now, how do you do that? How do I increase my ability to be more sensitive and more sympathetic for people? For us, sensitivity begins with our eyes. Sympathize with them. Then, it becomes, we move from our eyes, we see the need, and then we start using our ears. It's listening. It's learning to listen. It's getting in contact with that person. Learning to listen is the secret to genuine sympathy. The better listener you become, the more sympathetic you become. I read about an ad that appeared in a newspaper that said, I'll listen to anybody to speak about anything for 15 minutes for $20. You know, I bet you that guy made a pretty good living doing that. I'll listen to anybody about anything for 20 minutes for $15 or for $20. And a man named Joe Bailey wrote a book on grief about losing a loved one. And he talked about how that he had different people come to him. He says, from my experience, from his experience, he said, I was sitting by and I was grieving over the loss of my loved one. And someone came along and talked to me about God's dealings and why it happened and hope beyond the grave and all these different things that I was already aware of. He talked constantly. He said things that I knew that was true. But I was unmoved, except to wish that he would go away. And he finally did. Then another came and sat beside me, and he didn't talk at all. He just asked me how I was doing. This thing's bothering my ear here. Is the reason I'm kind of messing up here on you. I'm going to pull it out. It helps with the live feed when I have this thing in, but it doesn't work so much all the time. But anyway, he said this guy came in and he was listening. He sat beside me and he just listened. He didn't ask me any leading questions. He just sat there and listened. He just sat beside me for an hour or more, listening when I said something, answering briefly, praying simply, and left. I was moved. He said, I was comforted. I hated to see him go. Why? Because the guy sympathized with him. Sympathy involves the ears. Listening is a form of kindness that we show somebody. Sympathy does two things. It meets two of our basic needs. The need to be understood and the need to feel that all of us have to feel validated. That we are somebody. And that's what listening does. 2 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 4 says, He comforts us every time we have trouble. So when others have trouble, we can comfort them with the same comfort God gives us. God could say, why don't you get your act together? But He doesn't. Why don't you just straighten up? But He doesn't. You know, He might even say, hey, you've done this before. Circle. We can comfort them. That's what it says in that verse. Now, we asked you last week to rank yourself. 1 meaning I'm not doing very good at this. 5 meaning, I can sympathize with anybody. How do you rank yourself when it comes to sympathizing with other people? Do you stop, look, and listen? That's what this guy did. He stopped. He looked at the man, but he went further than looking. He sympathized with the man. He had sympathy for him. But next we need to also do what this man did. If you're going to be kind, you need to do the next thing. You need to seize the moment to be kind. Don't wait. Don't delay. Don't procrastinate. Do what you can at the very moment you see the need. That's what the third thing the Samaritan did. Look in Luke chapter 10, verse 34. It says, kneeling beside him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with medicine and bandaged him. Here's what he did. He went to him, one of the other versions says, so he went to him and he bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. He took action. He did something. He did something. We saw a few weeks ago in our study of our lesson, the very first, when we were talking about love, and we said something, that love is something that you do. He didn't just say, I feel sorry for this guy, or isn't that ashamed, or he didn't just feel something and say something. He went to the next step. He did something. And you'll notice that the man used what he had to help the man that was in need. He didn't have everything, but he did what he did when he had what he had. He didn't just call 911. He didn't just call the church to make an appointment for this guy to come to the church. He did what he could do right then. He did what he could do with what he had at that particular moment. Proverbs chapter 3, 27, 28 says this: never walk away from someone who deserves help. Your hand is God's hand for that person. Never tell your neighbor to wait until tomorrow if you can help them now. Man, that's a great verse. Listen, don't put it off. There are walking wounded all around us, all the time. Do it now. Spontaneous kindness. Seize the moment. The Good Samaritan teaches two profound lessons about kindness. If you want to be kind, I must be willing to do two things. Number one, I must be willing to be interrupted. Kindness doesn't happen on your schedule. Needs don't happen on your schedule. It happens, matter of fact, on other people's schedules. It usually happens in the most inopportune time. That's why they needed kindness. At the moment, you have to drop everything else. At that moment, when you see the need, you have to stop right then, meet that need right then. I know by now you've figured out that love is often inconvenient. And it is. You know, sometimes to stop and be kind to someone makes your whole schedule for the day go out of whack. Think of the excuses this man could have made not to be kind. Anytime I want to make an excuse for being unkind, the devil will be right there to give me one. You must be willing to be interrupted. Number two, you must be willing to take risks. You must be willing to take the risks. I don't know if you're worthy of my help. You might be thinking. Matter of fact, I had somebody after the lesson last Sunday came to me and said, Mitchell, I love that lesson, but you left off something. You need to tell people that when you talk about loving people, when you talk about being kind to people, you be kind to people whether they deserve it or not. You don't ask the question, do they deserve my kindness? That's not the question. Did this guy deserve his kindness? No. He didn't know from Adam's house cat. This guy, I don't know if he's worthy of my help, though a lot of times that's what we think. Well, I don't know about this. Or it might be a trap. Today we might say, man, if I stop and do something there, they liable to sue me. Isn't that how we feel today? Of course, by the way, I'll let you know on a thing. I work emergency services. There's a law to protect you for that, by the way. It's called the Good Samaritan Law. Isn't that interesting? It's a Good Samaritan Law. What it means is if you do what you can do with what you have at the time, you are not held accountable. If you do what you can do and maybe you even mess up, they can't sue you. It's called the Good Samaritan Law. And so, don't use that as an excuse. And by the way, if you don't believe me, look it up, Google it. The state of Tennessee has a Good Samaritan Law where if you act and you're not a professional and you do something to help somebody and maybe you not do it right, you're protected. Or you think, well, I might not even be able to help him. I don't know what to do. Bill and I were traveling to town the other day and we were going to town. There was a lady right there, where the First Baptist Church is, not the First Baptist, the big one, Central Baptist. Right there at the red light there, on the corner there, across the way. We were going to town. There was a lady on the other side, and her car was just stopped in the middle of the road. She had her emergency blinkers on. You could just tell they were irritated with her because the light was green. She was sitting there and all this. I said, Bill, do we need to stop and help that lady? He said, well, I don't know what we could do. I said, I don't either. But here we go. And we pulled over there, and he said, how can we do that? I said, watch me. I went over in the side lane there, and we pulled over and stopped, and I rolled down my window and asked her. She had gotten out of the car, opened the hood up. She said, oh, it's just this thing here. But I thought what she told me, it wasn't anything we did for her, by the way. She said, thank you so much for stopping. She said, I'm on the way to the funeral home. My mother just died. And I said, I'm just sorry for your loss. We didn't have to do anything. She had an old truck, and I don't know what she had. She's had some box in there, and she had a board in there, and she just moved that board and went in, cranked it, and drove off. I told Bill, I said, I'll just tell you, I'm no mechanic, but we could push her out of the side of the road if anything else. But she was able to get up and go. But I thought, wow, she just lost her mother and was going to the funeral home. You never know what you might run into. And you might not be able to help them. You say, well, I don't know what to do. There are all sorts of fears. Let me tell you something. Kindness is risky. Often we don't want to get involved in other people's pain and brokenness because it reminds us of our own pain and our own brokenness. We need to seize the moment to be kind. Rate yourself on spontaneous kindness. How quick are you when you see a need, sense a need, sympathize with the need? How quickly do you act on that need? Now, if you want to become a kind person, the fourth thing you need to do is the Good Samaritan did was to spend whatever it took. You start seeing the needs of others. You start sympathizing with their pain. You seize the moment to be kind. And then you have to spend whatever it takes. There's always a cost to kindness. There's always a price tag. It's going to cause you to have to sacrifice. It may not be money. It may be your time. It may be your energy. It may be whatever. But it always costs you to be kind. It costs to be kind. Luke chapter 10, look at this story. Verse 34 and 35. Then he put the man on his own donkey, which means now he's walking, and took him to an inn where he took care of him. Well, there's time blown. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 pieces of silver. Not only did it cost him his time and his energy, it cost him his money. Gave him 2 pieces of silver and told him to take care of the man. If his bill runs higher than that, he said, I'll pay the difference the next time I'm here. He did all that he could to take care of a total stranger. Ministers to him right on the spot. Takes him to a motel, cares for him through the night, then he pays the bill. Now, if this is not enough, he says, I'll pay you when I come back. What did he gain from this? Kindness is when you do something for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Really? So why be kind? Well, a few reasons. God has been kind to me. Extravagantly kind. Number 2, kindness makes me happy. Number 3, kindness makes other people want to be kind to you. And number 4, God blesses kindness. That's why you need to be kind. But you don't do kindness in order to get something in return. In Isaiah 58, 10 and 11, it says this. If you feed the hungry and take care of the needs of those who are troubled, then your light will shine in the dark. The Lord will always lead you, and He'll satisfy your needs in dry lands. You'll be like a spring that never runs dry. Galatians 6 and verse 10. He says, whenever we have opportunity to help anybody, we should do it. But we should give special attention to those who are in the family of believers. Proverbs 11 and verse 17. Your own soul is nourished when you are kind. Now, who will need your kindness this week? I promise you there will be God-given opportunities to love other people. To love, and we know that he says here in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 that love is kind. God's going to give you opportunities to love other people, and the way He's going to give you that opportunity is to show kindness. There's a woman named Susan Kidd who wrote the following. Let me read it to you. It happened years ago on one of those raw December days that makes people wish they had done their Christmas shopping in July. Snowflakes, winds whipped through the street, and hunched on the sidewalk bench sat an unshaven man. He wore a threadbare jacket and shoes with no socks. He folded a paper bag around his neck to keep out the biting wind. She said a shopper paused, saddened by the man. Such a pity, she thought. But there's really nothing she could do. While the shopper lingered there, a little girl, she said maybe 11 or 12 years old, walked by, spotted the frostbitten figure sitting on the bench. Wrapped around the girl's neck was a bright woolen scarf. She stopped beside the old man, unwrapped the scarf, draped it tenderly around his neck, and walked away. She said the old man just rubbed the warm wool. Then the shopper crept away, wishing that she had been the one that had given that scarf. And then she goes on to write, I was that shopper. And God, she said, and God taught me something that day. Wherever I am, whatever I possess, there's always something I can give. Maybe a touch, or maybe just a smile, maybe a prayer, maybe just a kind word, or even a scarf. There are so many people in Crossville, Tennessee. As a matter of fact, if you were just to say, I'm going to make a mission, I'm going to find somebody to be kind, just take a trip to Walmart. I've never been in Walmart. I didn't see somebody who was struggling with something. Sometimes all they need is a smile. I'm going to tell you, every one of those cashiers would love to have a smile. I'll just tell you that. Those guys get it all. Have you ever been through there and watched how people treat the cashiers? Just saying, how's your day? Just doing little kindnesses. Helping somebody, I usually, a lot of times if I'm not in a big hurry, a lot of times I go on a mission and I don't see much what's going on. I told y'all about that last week. But, a lot of times though, I will go in Walmart and I'll just look around for a little bit before I go in. I'll see some elderly person with their basket and I'll try to walk over and say, hey, can I help you load that in your car? Or help somebody sitting in the disabled parking space. Hey, can I take that basket for you? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can show kindness that doesn't cost you money. But you may be in that thing. And I know my son-in-law, I can remember last Christmas they were here and we were going through Walmart and there was this girl standing at the counter. She's buying all this stuff for her baby. And she had diapers and she had formula and she had this. And if you have small children, that's an expensive habit. I mean, those things, they're expensive. Gail and I didn't have to go through all that because back in the day we didn't have those fancy paper diaper stuff. My wife was in the bathroom in the toilet doing this stuff here with them dirty diapers, and she didn't get to buy it. But those diapers are expensive, and these kids today don't even know what a cloth diaper looks like. And then they've got wipes and they've formula. Have y'all ever seen that? Again, back in the day we didn't have those. That formula stuff. My wife breastfed all of ours and she did good, but some can't. You know how expensive that stuff is? It's $20-something a jug of just, powdered milk. We were going through the line at Walmart, and that lady had all her stuff up there, and she had her little kids in the cart. She had a cart full of them. It's getting close to Christmas time, and she's going through, and she's fiddling through. She went through, and she rang it up. She realized she didn't have enough money to pay for all that. And I love my son-in-law. I wasn't paying attention to what was going on. My son-in-law says, wait, she says, and she told him, you're going to have to pull this out, this out, this out. And my son-in-law said, ma'am, I'll buy that. And I knew, then, at the boy, I kind of felt guilty because my son-in-law probably makes half of what I make. But he saw the need. He had his eyes open. But I should have. Of course, I tried to make him take the money back. He said, oh, no, I'm not going to take that money back. You're going to steal that from me? I said, no. He said, no, I'm not doing that. And but how many opportunities are there like that every day? Just do something. You want to brighten somebody's day? You're pulling through McDonald's on your way to work, or you just tell them, say, hey, let me pay for this guy behind me. And don't go to the thing with how much did they order first. I know how some of y'all are. Just say, hey, let me get the guy behind me. And tell him I said to have a good day. Can you imagine what that would do? What if you were the person on the receiving end of that? When you say, That is so awesome. But you never know what the effect you might have on somebody. Just doing little. You don't know how bad their day is when you pull over. My mother just died and I'm going to the funeral home. You don't know. But it is all the time. So, will you make it your goal to grow in kindness? Do something a little different this morning. Would you bow with me and let's pray our way out? Dear Father, we thank you for your extravagant kindness to us. You sent Jesus to die for us, and we're so grateful for that. Father, help us to never be cruel or apathetic to those who are wounded. We really want to be more loving like you are. Help us to take those steps that we talked about towards kindness. Father, help us to slow down, start sensing the needs of people around us. Father, give us that spiritual radar. Help us to be better listeners so that we can sympathize with people. Father, when interruptions come, help us to see them as opportunities to grow in kindness, to be more loving. Help us to be willing to take risks and move against our fears in order to help others. Starting today, Father, help us to make ourselves available to you and to be used to show your kindness and to show your love to others. Father, for this we pray in your dear Son's name. Amen. This morning you may be here and maybe you need a little kindness. Maybe you just need us to say, hey, I'm struggling with something and I need you to pray for me. We could do that. Maybe you need to obey the gospel. We want to help you with that. If you've got a need this morning, we want to let you know that we're here for you, that we'll take the time. You know, if we have to be over that services, that's okay. We're here for you this morning. And if we can help you this morning, I want to encourage you to come as we stand. We offer the invitation.